On March 12th, the Russian elections unfolded with Putin's approval rating soaring to 82%. The majority of Russians support his expansionist warfare endeavors. This statistic feels like salt on the wounds of Ukraine. In this war, Ukraine bears the scars of devastation, with countless families enduring the pain of separation and death. As March 12th draws nearer, the Ukrainian military decides to take action. Anti-Putin armed rebellion sweeps across border regions of Russia. On March 12, 2024, several volunteer battalions affiliated with Russian exile organizations based in Ukraine, including the Freedom of Russia Legion, Siberian Brigade, and RDK Battalion, launched a direct assault into the Russian territories bordering Ukraine. The areas included the regions of Belgorod, Kursk, and Bryansk. Upon arrival, they immediately engaged in fierce clashes with local military forces. This is not merely a border skirmish, but a widespread uprising aimed at overthrowing the Putin regime within Russia, ultimately establishing a democratic Russia. Rumors suggest they intend to march onto Moscow. This conflict marks the largest-scale assault on Russian territory since World War II, with a significant deployment of artillery and tanks. Many leaflets and videos are circulating, urging local residents to evacuate quickly or seek shelter in air raid bunkers to avoid harm. Consequently, many people begin to evacuate, with some even fleeing directly to Ukraine. These factions also declare that their actions aim to liberate people from the grip of terrorist organizations that have usurped power, promising to free them from poverty and fear. With Russia in the midst of elections, while this rebellion may not significantly alter the outcome, it profoundly impacts the social and political landscape. It indicates that deep within Russian society, there remains a call for change. The Russian government's response has been swift, mobilizing numerous military and police forces to quell the uprising. Officials claim to have regained control of the situation, yet as of March 15th, fighting persists. The rebels assert that they have seized control of certain areas. These anti-Putin military forces have shown particular concern for civilians. With the assistance of local anti-Putin law enforcement and security officials, several thousand people escaped through humanitarian corridors from Belgorod and Kursk. This also indicates a weakening of Russia's control over these two regions. Ukraine's response has been astute, stating that these actions are carried out by Russian volunteers themselves. These Russian citizens engaged in a series of social and political services, acting within reason and legality. Essentially, they assert that these initiatives are orchestrated by Russians themselves and have no connection to Ukraine, deflecting any accusations of invasion. The insurgent organization further declares its intention to continue attacking military facilities in Belgorod and Kursk until these regions are completely liberated from the control of Putin's regime. The anti-Putin operation has been bombarding Belgorod for 4 consecutive days, with air raid sirens becoming a daily occurrence in the area. The Freedom of Russia Legion has announced the complete occupation of specific areas in the Kursk region, such as Tekhino. According to some experts, if Putin fails to swiftly regain control of the situation, more individuals may join the rebellion. Russian leadership is also beginning to realize that they may lose control over the regions of Bryansk, Kursk, and Belgorod around the time of the presidential elections. While these cross-border attacks may not directly assist Ukraine in reclaiming lost territory, they could potentially compel Russian forces to withdraw from key battlegrounds in eastern Ukraine. This would be crucial for Ukraine. If this momentum continues, the states near the Ukrainian border may fall into the hands of Russian resistance groups. For Russia, regaining control of these territories would become increasingly difficult. After all, they cannot conduct airstrikes on their own soil. Moreover, if urban warfare ensues, the difficulty of reasserting control over these areas will significantly increase. If Belgorod, Kursk, and Bryansk break free from Putin's regime, it would be a significant advantage for Ukraine. On the negotiating table, Ukraine would have a stronger bargaining position, potentially even facilitating an agreement for a land swap between both parties. Ukrainian drones deal heavy blow to Russia's oil lifeline. Next, let's delve into the economics of Russia's warfare. The expenses incurred by Russia in this war are immense. The frontline soldiers' supplies, wages, medical expenses, along with compensation payments, combined with the cost of combat, burn through over $300 million per day. Looking back to 2022, Russia's total military expenditure was $86.4 billion, accounting for 4% of its GDP. By 2024, this figure surged to $119 billion, reaching 6% of GDP. Where does all this money come from? Primarily, it relies on oil and gas sales. However, the low-quality crude oil sold to India doesn't generate much profit. The real moneymaker lies in selling refined oil products. As for natural gas, Russia lost out on Germany's Nord Stream 1 pipeline due to a complete breakdown following an explosion, becoming a cold case with Poland's non-cooperation hindering any investigation. Furthermore, even the refineries are being bombed by Ukraine. Most of Russia's refineries are located in the western part of the country, within reach of Ukraine's new type of drones. If Ukraine maintains this level of bombing intensity, the refineries marked in the red circle would be wiped out, causing Russia to lose half of its refining capacity. Starting from the 12th, Ukrainian security forces launched attacks on Russian refineries using long-range drones for 4 days. As a result, Russia has lost at least 12% of its oil production capacity. On March 12th to 13th, Ukrainian forces utilized drones to strike refineries in Russia, specifically in Ryazan, Kostovo, and Kurashak. These 3 refineries are among the top 5 in Russia, resulting in an immediate 12% reduction in Russia's oil processing capacity. The Ryazan refinery, with an annual refining capacity of 17 million tons, is Russia's largest refinery. Now, with its production capacity significantly reduced, it is nearly on the verge of shutdown. As the Russian presidential elections draw near, domestic oil prices have surged by 2%. The market is concerned with potential supply disruptors. Most Russian refineries lack proper air defense systems, making them vulnerable to Ukrainian drones carrying dozens of kilograms of explosives. Additionally, the maintenance of these refinery facilities relies heavily on Western expertise. Amid ongoing sanctions, this dependence on Western support has led to irreparable damage to Russia's refining capabilities. In an effort to control the rising prices of refined oil products, the Russian government reinstated a ban on gasoline exports starting from March 1st. But the majority of Russia's refineries are concentrated in the western part of the country, well within the strike range of Ukrainian drones. To mitigate domestic oil price hikes, it's not unlikely that the Russian government may resort to importing refined oil products from abroad in the future. These series of attacks have directly hit Russia's economic lifeline. If Ukraine continues its onslaught, Russia's war expenses will become increasingly unsustainable. To compound matters, as Russian refineries are bombed, Bulgaria has halted its import of Russian crude oil, India is seeking oil supplies from Saudi Arabia, and even Turkey's ports in the Mediterranean are nearly ceasing to import Russian oil. Furthermore, if Ukraine possesses drones with a range exceeding 3,000 kilometers, they could potentially launch attacks on the Yamal Cross in northern Siberia. This area serves as the intersection point of 17 major natural gas pipelines. A successful strike would sever 85% of Russia's natural gas transportation production capacity, subsequently affecting the supply of raw materials for gas, electricity, heat, and explosives production within Russia. Utilizing drones and unmanned boats, coupled with Storm Shadow cruise missiles, Ukraine has inflicted significant damage on the Black Sea Fleet. A quarter of its main vessels were damaged, rendering the entire fleet hardly invisible on the Black Sea. Thus, Ukraine demonstrates considerable potential, but lacks significantly long-range, electronically interference-resistant advanced drones. Nevertheless, the achievements, particularly in targeting refineries in the Black Sea Fleet, significantly boost the morale of the Ukrainian people and military. Drone strikes and vanishing ballots spark public outcry. The ongoing Russian presidential elections kicked off with voting in Belgorod, only to be disrupted by Ukrainian drones, causing chaos among voters and officials alike. To ensure Putin's victory, voting stations in Kursk Oblast and Rostov Oblast along the Don River were exclusively supplied with government-provided pens. Any marks made with these pens vanish upon exposure to heat, a tactic evidently aimed at altering anti-Putin votes. The Russian police have arrested a man at a polling station for expressing his intention to vote for a candidate other than Putin. On the occupied territory in Ukraine, a scene unfolds where a soldier with an automatic rifle and a woman holding a ballot visit a 98-year-old woman in the city of North Donetsk, their aim to ensure she casts her vote correctly. As the war persists, the pressures of life gradually erode the hopes and patience of ordinary people. More and more Russians are realizing that it's Putin who has turned their country into hell. A courageous elderly woman tells reporters, "We need to change the government. We need to replace the president. It's time to replace the representatives in parliament as well." Has life improved during Putin's 20-year reign? We pensioners don't feel it. The price of coffee in cafes is as expensive as in restaurants. 10 years ago, we could have lunch in a cafe, but now we can only afford some snacks. Our city looks like a ruin with packs of stray dogs. When the war in Ukraine started, there were planes flying over my house every day. Putin once said the retirement age wouldn't increase, but now it's changed. What else can he do? He has plenty of excuses. Putin, you better shut up. How will Putin's game end? With the overall situation on the Ukrainian battlefield continuing to develop unfavorably for Russia, Putin finds himself unable to continue. Further engagement will only lead to more loss of control. Ukraine is soon to receive F-16 fighter jets. Soldiers from several NATO countries are assisting Ukraine, including the UK's Special Air Service, SAS, Poland's Mobile Detachment, and even combat aircraft instructors. Europe is ramping up its assistance to Ukraine, and while the $60 billion aid package from the U.S. is still pending in the House of Representatives, emergency funding has also been allocated. After Sweden joined NATO, the Baltic Sea became NATO's inner lake, making it inconvenient for Russian commercial ships and warships to enter and exit freely. In the Black Sea region, Turkey is taking advantage of the situation to negotiate, demanding Russia to relinquish some control over Syria in exchange for freedom of passage in the Black Sea. With increasing domestic issues, Russia is facing tough times. But Putin is reluctant to make concessions at this point, insisting on negotiating based on the current situation. Ideally, Putin would prefer not to return Ukrainian territory, but he is open to negotiations, even considering relinquishing all of occupied Ukrainian territory in exchange for significant concessions from the West, such as lifting all sanctions and collaborating on Indo-Pacific strategy to ease tensions. This is Putin's wishful thinking, and it ultimately depends on Ukraine's intentions. Ukraine is counting on increased assistance from the EU and the US, particularly in terms of providing more air defense weapons, ground equipment, and F-16 fighter jets. With these, they believe they can drive Russia out and even seize some Russian territory, giving them leverage in negotiations with Putin. Ukraine lacks sufficient weapons, but even with just a few volunteer battalions from Russia, they have penetrated dozens of kilometers into Russian territory. But Ukraine's ambitions don't stop there. They aim to fundamentally undermine Russia's economic foundation and social stability, allowing the volunteer battalions to rapidly grow within Russia and create nationwide chaos. In summary, the frontline battle will continue to be a stalemate, with Ukraine flexibly maneuvering to wear down the Russian military while awaiting more weapons, especially the F-16s. The use of drones in Ukraine and Russian territory will increase. Once the F-16s arrive, the tide of the war is expected to turn, with the US and NATO controlling the pace behind the scenes. Internal opposition in Russia will continue to agitate, stimulating social change while keeping the Russian military occupied. Ukraine will continue to carry out airstrikes on Russia, primarily targeting energy infrastructure to undermine its economic foundation.